I was just reading Executioner's Song by Norman Mailer for the first time, and the brother book In the Belly of the Beast, and also published by Norman Mailer. And I just downloaded every episode of Cops, the greatest American TV show. And
You're just watching it.
we were just watching it before we left for the other screening. And I mean, it's just there's always been a fascination and an obsession with the American criminal and the prison ethos in America and how trapped everyone is, and breaking free. I'm always trying to break free, and I hate time more than anything in the world. That's why I call it good time. But like I really can't stand time, and I just want to create the illusion that it doesn't exist. And that's why I love movies so much, is because we come into these dark rooms and you just like time travel in a weird way.
But then you have a movie like Good Time where time is so important. You know, you can't help but escape that impending minute mark. You know, it's time distilled to its.
Speaking in terms of time, like before we wrote the screenplay, because Rob, isn't the character. He's, there's parts of him in it, but he's very far from the character. That speaks to his incredible performance. And of course Benny's performance does not talk about that either, but we had to basically know who this person was inside out, and I did obsessive work in developing the backstory, and I realized we couldn't overlook a 3-month gap. So it's like when he's born all the way up until and as he got closer to the beginning of the movie, it got every day he was released from prison, what he did and how he did his interactions with Nick and the grandmother. And it just let us know the characters so well that when we put ourselves as writers, me and Ronald, we just knew exactly what this guy would do.
Well, one of the things that I saw in reading about the film was that you mentioned Cops, that you kind of wanted to pursue one of these characters that you might see in Cops,
Mm-hmm.
like what's his day-to-day life like when he's not in front of these cameras, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you were developing all this backstory and developing all these characters, Robert, you were on another film. You were like somewhere else getting notes sent back and forth from these guys, yeah?
Further away.
Yeah, in Colombia, in the rainforest.
Colombia, in the
Yeah.
rainforest.
And a long time before that as well. I mean, I think, I don't know if you sent me an initial draft of the script first, or if it was, I feel like I was just always being sent stuff, whether it was just images of people's mugshots who were just kind of just felt sort of right, or whether it was this documentary, A Year in the Life of Crime, this old HBO documentary, but also there would be a few scenes at a time, and then a backstory would come, and it would kind of come piecemeal from all over the place, and so it was kind of an organic kind of web that came, and rewrites of the script and redrafts and blah, 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 and it was just over a really, really long period of time, and I think it's strangely satisfying to see, even if pieces of a character are abandoned and they're rewritten completely, there's just to know the kind of the process, you get more on the same wavelength.
I really want to know more about your preparation process. I mean, the transformation that we saw in Robert in this film is astounding. I just was blown away by this. Can you talk a bit about how you went about preparing for the role? There's a physicality there that's incredible, and obviously vocally, and as Josh said, your upbringing is pretty far afield from this guy.
But it's like it's a fantasy figure. It's like, you grow up watching movies, and it's I think this kind of Connie as a character belongs to the pantheon of cinematic not archetypes, but just characters, which I grew up watching, grew up wanting to be not necessarily wanting to play, but like kind of idolizing, and being influenced by, and kind of, in terms of how we approached it, it's sort of just having a really long period of getting on the same page, and also because all these guys, pretty much everybody involved in the movie is from New York, and they're from Queens, and it's a specific type of energy which you can just, if if you're just around it long enough, you start absorbing different bits of an energy, and but also it's just like it's not like playing a character which you wouldn't want to be in some way. Like, kind of a lot of me wants to be that.
I mean, you were bothering me. You were, I was willing to engage with it. You were like, I want to meet all these people. I wanna meet, you know,
And it's kind of
Bill and Kaz, all those guys.
yeah, it's exciting. It's I think the whole point of doing any acting, in being an actor, the satisfying part of it is to fully empathize with the character, and I think the most easy way to fully empathize with it is to try and kind of inhabit it, and I think it was fun. I mean, it was like me and Benny would go and do and basically be in character for like entire days, and then and just and I think it was also I'd never done that before. Like we went to there was this one day we went to a Dunkin' Donuts, and I was still kind of you're thinking that someone can see through a performance, but when you suddenly realize that people aren't just people in the real world aren't seeing through the performances, it's like, oh well, I guess we're acting in a way, but it's not acting. It's like you're kind of I don't even know what you're doing at that point.
So you're fully in character at the Dunkin' Donuts.
I had Dunkin' Donuts in Yonkers. Yeah, it was near the. Then we went to a garage a friend of mine has, and spent about 8 hours there, and just listening to stories, and then picking up on one story, and then this guy was like, oh, I know exactly this type of guy. I know who Connie is, and he took us on a walking tour of his recently deceased brother, and it was just like this really peculiar, really incredibly independent guy, and we were walking around at these personal landmarks. This guy in Rocky Point, Long Island, and we were just couldn't believe it. He's like, yeah, this is where he thought he killed the guy and he buried him, but he didn't bury him deep enough. So the guy came out and like walked down the street, and I saw him right there, covered in dirt. But like this story, we were reliving them, and we were like taking pictures almost. It was awesome. I mean, it was great. I mean, Rob really constantly was saying like, I want to meet someone else. I want to meet someone else, and that was great for me. Like went to Manhattan Detention Center in jail. Through my weird research, I ended up kind of becoming friends with the commissioner of jails of New York City, and strangely I met him and someone kept calling him the commish, and I was like, why does he call me the commish? It's like, oh, I'm a commissioner. I was like, commissioner of what? I was in like 137th Street. He's like, I'm commissioner of jails of New York City, 5 boroughs. And I was like, wow, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, anytime you want to come, I'll show you whatever you want. So we went down to Manhattan Detention Center, and he was Connie wasn't able to speak yet, but we were developing the look and the vibe, and he wouldn't really open his mouth the entire time. And we went through a really in-depth tour where the inmates thought that we were like working for the government, and we were like, inmate outreach, and they were like, yo, let me talk to you.
Were you dressed in a suit?
I was dressed in the car salesman suit, yeah. It was incredible, and it was amazing to see him kind of start, when you raise the stakes on an actor or a performer of like, listen, you have to become someone, because the stakes of being shouted out and called out are not only embarrassing, but also like, they're real, you know what I mean? It's just like someone screams, hey, Rob Pattinson, what are you doing in jail? Like,
But someone did think I was there for Scared Straight. Anytime I was called out.
In a weird way, I would argue it's almost more frightening to be called out in the Dunkin' Donuts, because it's such a small.
Well, also, Benny, you were in character.
Oh, no, but
you were
I'm saying-
being really difficult with the guy.
Yeah. I was ordering a very
coffee.
specific thing. I had a very specific order I wanted in mind, and Connie clearly knew that, and they were treating me in a specific way, and then for Rob, I was like, okay, this is what it's like to have Nick in the world, with him. And it was just awesome for me also just to feel what it's like to have this guy as my brother. What is that like? How does he care about my wants or feelings, or does he care? With these certain things that are very helpful. But getting called out in that Dunkin' Donuts, it's a very small. They're all very small. Like when they're it's kind of, it would be very embarrassing. It's like in jail, yeah, it's scary, but in the Dunkin' Donuts, there's something more existential about it.
Maybe more embarrassing for him in jail.
Well, they're behind they're in jail. So.
I want to ask you about your preparation process too, Benny, for the role of Nick. You had put on some weight at the time that you guys were about to shoot this. You were preparing for another role, I guess, right?
Well, yes, in 2010, with Ronald Bronstein, we were going to make a movie where I kind of went through I mined my own emotions and feelings and kind of came up with like the foundation for what we didn't know was Nick at the time. It was Jordan, and I developed this way of talking that I could use, and then
Speech impediment.
yeah, and so everything became this character Jordan, and we were going to make a movie with him. We filmed a bunch of rehearsals, and the movie never ended up happening. But we had this person who existed in this fictional reality that just never ended up happening. And then 7 years later, it's like, okay, let's revisit this character. And then because I put on weight for another role, like actual muscle, and then we did an interview for the financiers, and to kind of to say like, hey, I can play this part, I can be this person. And so I came in as Jordan. I went in thinking I was going to get money from this woman. I wasn't quite sure what was happening, and it got very uncomfortable in the room. And I said, "Can I leave?" And she said, "Yes, of course. You're not, I'm not holding you here, you know." So I got up and left. We sent it to the financiers, and like, that guy's great. Let's cast him. And they didn't know it was me. And I was like, I had seen these people, had spoken to them, but after watching that, I realized, okay, there was a physicality now. This guy could take whatever he wants when he wants. So there's going to be a hardening of his own feelings, and it's going to be even harder to get inside. Whereas before he was a little bit younger and not as strong, so there was a little bit more. You could mold him more, but now he's had 7 years of just.
And then throw into the mix that Benny just had his son, and 2 weeks before we started shooting, and it was just like that added to the melee of it all, kind of for him.
And you know, the adding to the grit and the authenticity of the film, there's a lot of street casting. There's a lot of actors who, you know, didn't come from the acting world. Some of these guys were doing their first appearances on film.
Talia, yeah, who plays Crystal,
Webster,
yeah.
Plays a 16-year-old girl, and the guy at the front who is
Peter Verby.
Peter Verby, who is the counselor.
Yeah.
Where did he come from?
He's a cinephile in New York who was actually kind of part of that other project that we were talking about from 2010. But he's a criminal lawyer. He was a public defender. He was out part of the character building. Him and Rob sat down a bunch and talked about the type of people that he represented and how they act.
He was an advisor.
In a way, yeah. I mean, he's also just honestly, like, he just oozes. He's like Big Bird, you know? He just is like so sweet. And like having that presence in such an institutional place was really, kind of, it was interesting. It was like,
Sorry.
I don't know what's happening
We're
here.
getting audience questions.
Oh, cool.
Karen,
I thought there was like a...
Take him away, boy.
Yeah, he's incredible. But throughout the movie, you see, like the guy, the commissioner of jail, shows up in the intake. He's the shaved head guy. He could dictate the scene really well. Some of the inmates in the day room scene are friends or friends of friends or people who street casting met through halfway houses, and they were dictating the blocking.
We were talking about, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to block it this way, and then Jerome just says it wouldn't go down like that. I'm like, what do you mean? And then he starts telling us exactly how it would happen. And so we pull over the stunt coordinator and we're like, okay, listen to him, this is how it's going to go. And just kind of being open to that and being open to...
Because we wanted to make a thriller, we wanted to make something that was entertaining, but at the same time actually had a real sense of kind of danger because it was enmeshed with reality.
Well, you did that.